Welcome back to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here today because we are unpacking literally one of the most powerful tools in any filmmaker's arsenal, camera movement. But before we get into the weeds, do me a favor. Picture a scene in your head. The camera's just flying everywhere, right? Swaying left, dipping right, pushing in, pulling out. It's super busy. Okay, now picture a second scene. The camera is dead still. And then, right at the exact moment a character makes this devastating realization, it just slowly, purposefully pushes in. Now, honestly, which of those experiences actually grabs you?
It kind of begs the question, right? Which of those actually feels more professional? Constant, chaotic motion in every direction, or moving only when it absolutely matters? Look, it's a trap so many of us fall into when we're starting out. We think, hey, if the camera's moving, it looks cinematic. But no, constant motion without a reason, that doesn't look cinematic. It just looks chaotic. It literally just distracts us from the story. So let's just get right to the heart of it. The absolute core of today's explainer boils down to this. Great camera movement isn't about motion. It's about motivation. Every single time that camera shifts, whether it's just a tiny subtle pan or this massive sweeping crane shot, it has to have a reason to exist. You know, a moving camera can do so much. It reveals hidden information, it injects sudden energy, it builds up unbelievable suspense, or it makes your viewer feel like they are standing right there in the room with the characters. But the bottom line, it absolutely must be motivated by the story. All right, Section 1, The Observer, Stationary Base Movements. Okay, so with stationary base movements, the actual legs of your tripod are planted. They do not travel through space. And honestly, it's kind of funny, but the very first movement we got to talk about is actually no movement at all. The static shot. The camera is totally locked off, completely still. Now, why is that powerful? Well, stillness creates stability. When the frame isn't moving, you are literally forcing your audience to focus 100% on whatever is happening inside that frame. You're basically whispering to the viewer, hey, sit back, observe, and just pay attention to what's right in front of you. So when exactly should you lock that camera down? Well, static shots are absolutely your best friend for a few very specific scenarios. Think interviews, where you want us focused on the person's words, not what the camera's doing. Or heavy dialogue scenes, establishing shots of a new location. Or even just really calm, emotional moments. Honestly, if a character just got some heavy news, sometimes a completely still camera is the most respectful, powerful way you can possibly capture that moment. But hey, sometimes we do need to move. Enter the pan. This is when you move the camera left or right, but the base itself stays in the exact same spot. It's exactly like you just turning your head left to right to scan a room. We use a pan to follow a subject walking past us, or maybe to reveal a piece of information hiding just out of frame, or even just to show off a massive environment. The general rule of thumb here, keep it nice, slow, and smooth. Well, unless your story specifically calls for a super fast, jarring whip pan to inject some quick energy. Next up, we have the tilt. Now this is the exact same concept as the pan, but we're operating on the vertical axis. You're moving the camera up or down without actually changing its physical position in space. And tilts, they are absolutely fantastic for reveals. Just imagine tilting up from a character's beat-up, muddy shoes all the way to their face to show they've just survived this grueling journey. Or tilting up the side of a massive, imposing skyscraper to make your audience feel incredibly small. It's all about looking up and looking down. Now let's look at a slightly different vertical movement, the pedestal. So instead of tilting the lens up or down, you are actually raising or lowering the entire camera body straight up or straight down on its column. The crucial thing here is that the camera stays perfectly level. It's not looking up, it's not looking down, it just elevates or drops. It is a super slick, highly polished movement. You'll see this all the time in high-end product videos and professional studio interviews, usually just to subtly adjust the framing. Let's shift gears to Section 2, the participant, moving through space. All right, now we are physically moving the camera through the environment, which completely changes how the audience relates to the space. And the most famous of these? The dolly. A dolly moves the entire camera straight toward or away from your subject. And man, this just brilliantly illustrates the emotional power of space. A slow dolly in pushes the audience closer to a character. It creates this intense intimacy, or it builds up massive nail-biting tension. It's literally like leaning in to hear a secret. On the flip side, a dolly out physically pulls us away. That can make a character suddenly feel totally isolated, lonely, or just completely swallowed up by their environment. Okay, real quick aside here, because it is absolutely crucial to understand the difference between a dolly and a zoom. People mix these up constantly. Look,
A zoom is just changing the focal length of the lens. You're magnifying the image, but the camera itself hasn't moved a single inch. It feels kind of artificial, right? Like you're looking through a telescope. But a dolly? A dolly physically changes the camera's position in space. You are actually moving through the room. Parallax happens. Objects in the foreground shift at a totally different rate than objects in the background. A dolly actually feels like you are stepping closer to that person. Next, we've got the truck, which you'll also hear called a tracking shot. This is when you move the entire camera sideways while keeping your subject perfectly in frame. Say your character is walking down the street from left to right, and you want to walk right alongside them, keeping that framing locked. Yep, that's a truck shot. It's such a brilliant way to show movement through a location while maintaining this really consistent, unbroken visual connection with your character. And for those moments of just pure spectacle, we have the crane or the jib. This is moving the camera smoothly upward, downward, or just completely sweeping through the air. You usually see these massive dramatic moves at the very beginning of a scene to establish where we are, or right at the end of a movie to pull back and reveal the bigger picture. Like, picture panning up and away from a huge crowd to reveal an entire sprawling city. It just brings undeniable scale to your shot. Moving on to section 3, the vibe check, stylistic movement choices. So the actual physical way we carry the camera, that completely changes the emotional tone of the footage. Let's take the handheld camera. This is exactly what it sounds like. The operator is physically holding the camera. Those tiny little vibrations and natural body movements, they create an immediate sense of gritty realism and urgency. It's the absolute hallmark of documentaries, war films, and intense action sequences. But then, in total contrast, we have the gimbal. Gimbals use motors to perfectly stabilize the camera, creating this incredibly smooth, elegant gliding sensation. They're basically magic for travel films, dream sequences, or high-end cinematic tracking shots. But the point is, you have to choose intentionally. What does the scene need? Gritty urgency or smooth elegance? Let's look at section 4. One scene, 4 feelings. The corridor demonstration. Okay, let's actually put all of this into a practical mental exercise. Let's call it the corridor demonstration. The setup is super simple. A college student is just walking down a hallway. That's it. The action never changes, but I want you to watch how the feeling does. Step 1, we shoot it static. Camera doesn't move at all. The student just walks right through the frame. This feels like objective observation, right? We're just watching from afar. Step 2, we pan. We stay in one spot, but we turn the camera to follow them as they walk. Now we are actively tracking their movement. Step 3, we truck alongside them. Suddenly, the audience feels like they are walking right next to the student, matching their exact pace. We're with them now. And step 4, we do a slow dolly in right as they stop to read a strange message on a bulletin board. Boom! Suddenly the emotional impact spikes. Remember, the action never changed. The student just walked down a hall. But the camera's motivation, that changed the entire feeling of the scene. Which brings us to section 5, common mistakes, why movement fails. Let's break down why movement so often goes wrong. And look, we've all been there, but a lot of times beginners rely on random movement just for the sheer sake of motion. We get these incredibly fast pans that just make the audience dizzy and totally lose their spatial awareness. Or we see people flying around on gimbals for every single shot, even when 2 characters are literally just sitting at a table having coffee. The result? Totally distracting footage. Professionals, on the other hand, they use motivated movement. If that camera moves, it's because a story beat forced it to move. They rely on stable composition, they prioritize purposeful storytelling way above playing with flashy new toys. And honestly, that is what creates actual professional cinematography. And that leads perfectly into section 6, the golden rule. Treat movement like dialogue. As we start to wrap things up today, I really want to leave you with a core philosophy, something to keep in mind every single time you pick up a camera. Great filmmakers treat camera movement exactly like dialogue, because every movement communicates something. A slow dolly in, that's not just a dolly, it's a whisper. A handheld shot isn't just a lack of a tripod, it's a frantic shout. A locked-off static frame isn't just boring, it's a purposeful, dramatic silence. Your audience might not consciously know why you chose to use a tracking shot instead of a pan, but trust me, they will always, always feel its emotional effect. So I'm going to leave you with this final pre-shoot check. Seriously, write this down, memorize it, and ask yourself this exact question before you hit record on your next project. What does this specific movement add to the story? And if your honest answer is nothing, then why are you moving?
Challenge your visual decisions, guys. Stay motivated. I really hope this explainer has completely shifted the way you view the space behind the lens. Get out there, move with purpose, and I'll catch you next time.